Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Hello, Rush Nation. Here we are. Time for a start and sit 'em, which is having a bit of technical difficulties. I've actually recorded this one already, but lost the audio. So we're going to go again. Lots of content to bring you today and to get through. So I want to make sure that we're getting through it all for you and give you some top tips in starts and sits for this week. We'll start at the quarterback position. We're going to go straight through these. And in that Cincinnati versus Washington game, I definitely am starting both quarterbacks. I have both these quarterbacks, Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels, in my top 6. I actually have Jaden Daniels ahead of Joe Burrow as it stands right now, just with that rushing floor. But this game's predicted to be almost 49 points, and therefore is going to be expected to be a shootout. And with that in mind, I definitely want both pieces of this. If I have them in the Superflex, I'm comfortable starting both against each other. Both of these players have put up significant fantasy points. I say significant in relation to their counterparts at the moment. Jaden Daniels is averaging over 20 fantasy points a game. Slowest start for Joe Burrow. He's only putting up 15, but we know that it's going to get better for him. He's had a tough start, and it will only get better. Looking at this, especially for Joe Burrow, like if we look at what we've seen against Washington already, Baker Mayfield and Daniel Jones have already put up over 450 passing yards combined against Washington, and we expect them to leak more passing yards again. It's a team that you can pass on comfortably. Jamar Chase should also be in for a good week this week as a result. And Jaden Daniels, again, with this shootout mentality, him using his legs, I think he's going to be propelled to have to make even more plays, and we'll see even more out of him. I also like Baker Mayfield this week. I have him at QB8. He is averaging 29 points a game at the moment, which makes him the leading fantasy quarterback, believe it or not, which is just absolutely mad how good he has been so far this season. In fact, he scored over 20 fantasy points in 8 of his last 9 games, including the playoffs, which is a really, really good statistic. And even though this defense has been quite good, I think it's safe to say that he is a must start at the moment, Baker Mayfield, in all formats every week, and let that continue. I have him at 8 this week as a result. Quarterbacks, I'm sitting Matt Stafford without all of his weapons against San Francisco is just the absolute nightmare scenario. So I'm absolutely nowhere near Matt Stafford. Justin Herbert, I have just around about quarterback 20. The worry of him against Pittsburgh is he's also not passed over 145 passing yards so far this season. That is a real concern for me. Trevor Lawrence against Buffalo. Trevor Lawrence has lost like his last 7 starts. He's got only 1 touchdown so far this season. He's averaging only 13 fantasy points a game so far this season. It's just everything stacks up. He's my QB 25. I am out on Trevor Lawrence this week in particular. Looking at running backs to start, Brian Robinson Jr. has been an incredible asset so far this season. I've got him at RB17 this week. I feel pretty good and safe about him returning that for me. He's averaging 16.3 fantasy points a game right now. He's really, really piling on. He got 133 yards on the ground and 3 yards in the air, so 136 combined last week against the Giants, and expect him to follow this trend against the Bengals. Tony Pollard I have as my running back 12 this week. He is averaging 16.8 fantasy points a game. He had a huge game last week, and so as a result, I have got Tony Pollard in here. It's worth noting that Saquon Barkley put up 33 points against fantasy points against the Packers, and Jonathan Taylor put up 15.5 points last week, and he didn't play much of the fourth quarter, so it would have been more. So, Green Bay give up a lot of points to fantasy running backs, so line up Tony Pollard. This is a really good one to take advantage of. Rashad White, I think this is a good matchup for him, a get-right game. It depends how healthy he is, but I'm comfortable starting him at RB16 this week, and feel safe that he's getting all the high-value touches in this offense, so don't feel too worried about him. Moving on to the sits for this one, and it's hard because there's not many running backs you would sit, but Javonte Williams, I got him at RB30 right now against the Buccaneers. Now, there's no Vita Vea, which is probably the only reason I've got him at 30. If it was Vita Vea or Kalani Kansas both in there, I'll probably having him even lower than that. But they just haven't done much. He's only averaging 7 fantasy points a game. They really are struggling to get the ball moving. So Javonte Williams, you must have better options. You should be able to move on from him. Zeke Elliott is being out snapped by Rico Dowdle, and I think we're starting to see the transition of this offense to Rico Dowdle. So I'm definitely all out on Zeke Elliott, especially against Baltimore. And then Najee Harris, similar situation to Jalen Warren. Jalen Warren is out snapping him now, and he looks like as he's priming back to full health, he's going to take the majority of the role away from Najee Harris. And then you have on top of that, they're playing the Chargers in a very low scoring game. I don't want any part of Najee Harris in my lineups this week. Wide receivers to start. Jameson Williams, especially with Amon-Ra St. Brown getting a little bit banged up last week, we could see Jameson Williams really take advantage against Arizona. Amon-Ra St. Brown also has a really tough matchup in that one. So I actually think injured, tough matchup with the bench corner. I think they could really see Jameson Williams be exploited. No doubt he could get very close to another 100-yard game. Zay Flowers against Dallas. This is actually a really good matchup for him. I actually really like this one against him. He's got Kalen Carson, who I think is someone he can exploit and get the better of in this matchup. I've actually written up in my column for Fantasy Pros about this one. So definitely feel comfortable starting Zay Flowers this week. And then also on top of that, Rashid Shaheed, I've got him as wide receiver 12. I feel really good about Rashid Shaheed this week. I think he is going to be the main guy this week against Philly. I say main guy, like I think, again, he's scored back-to-back 50-plus yard touchdowns, and I expect that streak to continue potentially this week as much as possible. Wide receivers to sit, Jalen Waddle I have outside my top 60 wide receivers. I'm just worried about Tyler Huntley passing volume, and I think Tyreek Hill is going to be fine. I don't think that the same translates to Jalen Waddle. I think he really struggles without Tua, so expect him to almost go missing off the box score this week. And so I'm sitting him in all leagues. Michael Pittman is a potential sit candidate. I've got him at 28. I think the volume just about usurps with Josh Downs coming back. He's going to see some volume, but he does have the hardest cornerback matchup this week. He's up against Jalen Johnson, who's giving up less than 0.1 fantasy points per route run. 0.09 fantasy points per route run. He's only been targeted a little over 9% of the time on routes against him. I think he'll see more volume. Something's going to have to give there. The peripherals around Michael Pittman have been good, but it's also reliant on two things. One, the volume maintaining, and two, Anthony Richardson getting better at quarterback. And to get a better matchup. It's a lot of things, so I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to sit him this week. Christian Kirk, I've got absolutely no business in, averaging 2.5 fantasy points per game. He's had 7 targets, but only 2 receptions for 29 yards. You can't go anywhere near him, and especially what I've already said about Trevor Lawrence. And Courtland Sutton this week could get a load of targets. He's averaging 8 targets a game, but I've got him a wide receiver 43. I've got him in the flex. I can't put him in a star situation. He has to be a sit situation, even though the Buccaneers have one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. I think that pass rush is really going to be up on Bo Nix this week, and I think that could be a real problem. Looking at Titans to start, really you want to start anyone you can that's fit, but Isaiah Likely is a good one. I think this is going to be a good matchup for him. I think that Dallas will give him yardage over the middle and sort of often the short distance, and I think that's going to benefit him. He is a playmaker on that team, and Baltimore will be desperate to get something going and getting a W this week. And then you're looking at Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is against KC. Again, they're a team that are giving up points to tight ends. They've given up significant points to Isaiah Likely and Mike Gesicki. Both have over 16 fantasy points each this season. So Kyle Pitts could continue that trend. I also like Hunter Henry. I have him as my tight end 6. I think that, as I talked about in my previous video, that they're going to struggle to move the football. New England, but I think Hunter Henry is going to be one of the best chances of them to do that. The Titans I'm sitting this week. Dalton Schultz, tight end 19. He's averaging 4 fantasy points a game. This is not a game I expect him to get any real use out of. And Juwan Johnson, again, he is stuck behind Taysom Hill, and they're not really utilizing the tight end position. Just 3 targets in 2 games. I think he's still getting a bit healthy as well. If you're looking for a DST to pick up, the Buccaneers is a good one. They're less than 15% owned. They've got a great matchup against Denver. As I said, I expect them to get turnovers. I also like the Chargers if you can get them. I talked about them a couple of weeks ago. And I'm sitting the Eagles. I think this is a terrible matchup against New Orleans. It's not one I want any part of here. That's going to do it for starts and sits. Hope this has been useful. But you listen to the matchup show. Part 1 should already be out by the time this is out. That's going to give you a lot of context as to where I am. Part 2 will be out at some point shortly, where I'll be talking through every single game and where I've got every fantasy player ranked. So that should really help you understand why I've got these players where they are in my starts and sits this week. But good luck this week, Rush Nation. We'll keep piling on the content, and let's go get some W's to pull those ships closer to the harbor. But until then, Rush Nation, don't forget, as always, keep rushing.